Good afternoon and welcome to the Simple AAC Smartbox webinar. My name is Danielle Folks. I'm a speech language therapist and a clinical implementation lead at Smartbox. You're able to ask questions during this webinar in the chat section in YouTube, and we will answer questions at the end. Okay, let's get started. Sorry, just some technical issues. We will be started anytime soon. Okay, and we're away. So today's all about getting started with simple AAC. So a really good place to start will be to look at what actually is AAC. It stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. And in essence, that just means any way of communicating which helps or completely replaces speech when the individual is unable to speak or has problems with speech. The term can be quite overwhelming, but if we just think of it in this sense, then it makes life a bit more simple. You might hear the terms low-tech and high-tech, and we will use them in this webinar. So let's just have a little look at what these mean. So low-tech or no-tech AAC refers to anything that hasn't got a battery, and it's often paper-based, might be using a pen and paper to write or draw, alphabets, words, symbols, symbol boards or books. And high-tech AAC is something that might need a battery or mains power, and might be referred to as something called a speech generating device or a voice output communication aid. So what is simple AAC? So anyone new to AAC or anyone working in AAC will probably understand that it's a really wide field and there's so much information to figure out in this industry, in this world. So Simple AAC was originally a blog written by speech therapist at Smartbox Daisy Clay to try and bring together some of the ideas around helping individuals get started with learning language using AAC. It was really designed to take the fear out of AAC and answer the question of what do I do? How do I get started? And how can this not feel so scary to me to do it? It's based on best practice and research, and it's really important to say that the principles I'll talk through today in the Simple AAC series can be applied to any form of AAC, whether that's low-tech, paper-based or high-tech. Simple AAC is a series of 9 separate strategies, and we'll go through them all one by one. Let's look at the letter S to start with. So this stands for show. Now, if we think about how children learn speech in the typical way, they'll be exposed to thousands and thousands of hours of spoken language from the minute they're born, and we'll be hearing speech sounds even before they're born. Okay, so they're naturally surrounded by their language, but AAC learners aren't naturally surrounded by seeing other people use communication aids or low-tech systems. Okay, so we need to make it really clear to these learners of a different way to learn language. So all show means is pointing to the symbols as you talk to model that language. And it's really our job as that young person is developing to attribute meaning to everything that they experience in their day-to-day life, and try and show them how language can be associated to their behaviours. So when we are modelling language, we don't necessarily have to point to every single word in the sentence, but just the most important ones. So for example, you might want to say, do you want to play bubbles today? And then I might just point to play and bubbles. Pick out the most important words. It can take a bit of time for you to feel comfortable doing this, so it's nice to have a little practice before you get started. And it's absolutely fine to get things wrong. And in fact, I find that often when I'm working with someone learning language using AAC, they quite like it when we get things wrong, because it makes them feel less pressured and that they can do it too. So modelling, or it's also called aided language stimulation in the research, we know that this way of teaching language to AAC learners works, and the research has been around since 1989. Okay, so it's really, really important that we do it in lots of different situations and contexts. So whether it's during daily routines, so personal care and meal times, and also during natural play-based situations too. Okay, this is a really, really powerful quote. So by the time a child is 18 months old, they would have been exposed to 4,380 hours of spoken language. They hear it being spoken all day, every day. But if we imagine an AAC learner having speech therapy twice a week for 20 to 30 minutes, to achieve the same amount of language exposure, so modelling their language, they will be 84 years old. So that just really enforces the point that we need to be showing this language all day, every day, in lots of different situations and scenarios. Okay, so the next part in Simple AAC is to make what you're talking about interesting. We know that we have stronger memories associated with stronger emotions. So if you're having a really fun and happy experience, you're much more likely to retain that information. Similarly, we know that if, from research, if a child is exposed to language not necessarily in a play-based situation, they will learn that language a lot more slowly. Okay, we know that through play, children are able to learn language much more quickly than through any other kind of type of rote learning that might happen. It's really important that we also identify what's motivating for the person we're supporting. So we might have ideas about what we think is a fun activity to do, but actually it's really important to think about what that individual really likes. And it might be something completely unusual, such as washing their hands, or just kind of something that isn't a typical play situation. It's good to start off with things that we know children are going to like bubbles and building bricks and balls, but sometimes it's important to think outside the box and be creative with what we're doing and try and make opportunities to encourage learning to be fun. So if anyone listening today has learnt a language, you'll know that if you learnt it in school, you probably learnt it for a long time. So I learnt German from year 7 till at university, and I'm still not fluent now. So I had hours upon hours of language tuition. We know that it takes a really long time to learn a language, and we must give our AAC learners every chance to learn this language without having any pressure or a time frame for expecting them to be completely fluent in their AAC system. Okay, and also this is quite reassuring, because sometimes we can feel like we're doing loads of modelling and really showing the language in lots of different scenarios, and we might not necessarily see the AAC learner using much language back, but that's fine. I think we just need to watch and wait in that scenario and trust that they will learn the language along the way. This is a really nice point. So when a child is born, we speak to our children all the time, and we slightly slow our pitch down, and our rate of speaking down, and we might raise our pitch to help them tune into our speech sounds, but we speak at them and we speak at them and we speak at them. And so this is these are some pictures of a little boy called Sebi. At 2 months old, lots of speaking was happening in his life by his family members. At 10 months old, everyone was still speaking to him. He was probably making lots of great noises, babbling, making some good sounds, but might not have had any words at that point. So that's 10 months of being spoken to. And we're still not expecting that he's going to be even saying one word. But we don't give up. We carry on, and that's the point. If we're going to give typically developing children a long time to learn this language, then we should give children using language by AAC a good amount of time too. Pause. This is a really, really helpful strategy to use when we are helping AAC learners understand how to communicate. So we know that learners with complex needs might need more time to respond. And we know that by pausing, it's often a much more powerful way to show them that it's their turn to talk. So if we think of the alternative of pausing, it might be, we might want to say things like, come on then, your turn to talk, show me what you want to say. But that puts the learner under so much pressure to say something. And we know that just by pausing is a lot more powerful. If this is something that you find difficult, as it says on the slide, a really good strategy is to count to 10. It feels like forever, but it really works. So our next point in Simple AAC is language. Now, requesting is a really great place to start with AAC, but we use language for much more than just requesting in our lives. Okay, so it's really helpful that we teach different types of words and different types of what we call language functions. So one reason we use language might be to request, can I have the biscuit please? But we might also use language to say, I don't like the biscuit, so we're making a comment. We might use language to say, I had a biscuit, so we might be storytelling or recounting something that had happened. Or we might be explaining, so saying, well, this biscuit was pink and blue, party ring. We might be really kind of giving descriptive detail about that biscuit. So it's really important when we're modelling and showing that language that we're being really clear about different ways that we can use language with the children. So just as we would model the keywords, we are modelling different language functions. Okay, because the key is that we really want our AAC learners to be skillful and to be able to communicate about anything that they want in lots of different situations and scenarios. So here are some examples of lots of different types of language functions that I've just discussed. So our next point is to explore. Okay. It's really important that everybody has time to explore the AAC system, that the AAC learner has time both with someone supporting them and also independently to explore the AAC system. And often the first thing that an AAC learner will do when they're first presented with a page full of cells or buttons on a screen is to press every button and see what it says. And that is a great opportunity, even if something selected accidentally or just exploring together, to really attribute meaning to something that they've selected. So exploring is very, very natural and we all do it. So this screen is a perfect example. So imagine if you weren't able to read, the first thing you would probably do if you were presented with this screen is to press every single button on there to see what it said. You might be kind of familiar with what the symbols mean, but I would definitely need to press every button to figure out what they all meant. And I'd probably like to do that on my own, just in case I made some mistakes. So having that time is really, really important. So the first A of Simple AAC is always available. And so it's really important that the AAC learner has access to their communication system as much as possible. Now, we know with some speech generating devices, it's not always possible. Something might have gone wrong, they might not have it mounted properly, the battery might have died, but that's why it's really important to always have a paper-based or alternative backup so that they're always able to convey messages. So there's two reasons as well for being always available. One, so that they're always able to express themselves, but similarly so that the adults or those supporting and modelling the language have that language there to model. So for example, in a classroom setting, it might be good to have an AAC system printed nice and big at the front of the class so that the teacher can always be modelling that language throughout the lesson. It might be handy to have a little kind of small AAC system next to different play activities so that you can support the learning of language kind of on the hop when you're not always prepared and don't always have an AAC system there. So our second A is, I'll just let you have a minute to have a look through this. Okay, so our second A is add words. So once an AAC user becomes familiar with using their device, they might start to use single words or phrases. And we want to really expand their understanding of language. So a nice strategy to use, if they've selected one word, would be to expand it to two words. So for example, you might say bubbles, or the AAC learner might say bubbles, and a nice expansion of this would be to say more bubbles or pop bubbles. And if they said car, fast car, or my car. If they say two words, add a third, and so on and so on. And this can then be taken forward with grammar. So if they're perhaps using the present tense, but about something they did on the weekend, we can then go to showing them how to change it to the past grammar if their AAC system allows it. We're just trying to be mindful that we're always trying to show the next step, but that next step should be achievable. And so our last point in the Simple AAC framework is comment. It can be quite a natural response when we're communicating with children in general to ask questions that we already know the answer to try and elicit responses, because we sometimes think that that's a really good way to encourage the young person or the AAC learner to communicate. Some really nice examples here of something that you can do instead. So instead of do you like it, you can just say I like it. And so we're turning questions into comments. And instantly this really just takes the pressure down on that AAC learner, because by asking a question, all of the kind of expectation is on the AAC learner to respond. And sometimes if they don't feel confident, they don't know necessarily where the words are yet, they might just find that really difficult. And we want learning language via AAC to be a really fun experience that isn't too daunting. So modelling by commenting is really great. So commenting saying, oh, the weather's rubbish today, or I like the colour of your top. If you're really stuck for things to comment on and things to say, just kind of look in your environment around you. So short and sweet, that leads us to the end of the Simple AAC blog series and framework. You can have a look on our website. There are so many really good resources which kind of outline the framework really beautifully and simply. At Smartbox we have a core vocabulary package called Supercore, and there's a really nice resource linking Simple AAC to Supercore as well. So we have got a few minutes now if there are any questions. There are my details, but I think we'll just spend a bit of time. I'm just going to wait to see if any questions come through. So one question that we have had through is, what age is a good age to start modelling language? And really, as early as possible is the recommendation. So from those kind of pre-intentional behaviours, we can really start to attribute meaning to those behaviours. So if we have someone we would like to support to learn AAC, we might see them reaching over, and then we might say, wow, you want it, or you want something, and then we can point to the word want. And that's really powerful in teaching some really useful and flexible words from a very pre-intentional level. Okay, I'll just wait one more minute to see if we've got any more questions come through. So here are my that's my email address if you want to get in touch with me with any questions outside of the webinar today, or you watch this webinar after today. And there's the web address for the Simple AAC blog if you want further information on that. So just to say as well that we offer Simple AAC workshops in the UK for schools, and we've got a regional event coming up in Bristol on the 28th of March. So that's a 2.5-hour workshop looking at implementation strategies for AAC, and the regional event in Bristol also looks at some grid for iPad editing too. So I don't think there are any more questions right now, so I'm going to finish there. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.